Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right, so we're talking about Greta Gerwig's new film. She took Louisa May Alcott's book, kind of threw it into a blender, and what came out was what I think is an amazing structural piece of filmmaking, which I thought was awesome. I think that if I would have seen previous Little Women iterations, like films iterations of the Little Women story or adaptations of Little Women, or if I would have read the book, I would appreciate this film even more. But my wife, I finally got her to go to Little Women with me. This has been my life's purpose over the last few weeks because she outright refused to see this film. And I was like, no, we'll go see it together. And she's like, no, not seeing it. And then somehow I got her to go with me in a certain circumstance. We're like, let's just do it. And then so we went and saw it. And then afterwards, we watched the 1994 version of Little Women with Winona Ryder and Claire Danes and all, everybody else. Christian Bale's in it. So I have a little bit better appreciation of this film. What did you think about it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I texted you devastatingly beautiful were the two words I would use to describe the experience I had. And you were like, that's a good way to put that. It was devastatingly beautiful. I loved everything about it. From the moment it started to the moment it ended, I was exhilarated. I was sad. I was happy. I was crying. I was laughing. I did that thing where I laughed out loud at things that I thought were funny that other people in the audience kind of looked at me like, what film are you watching? There's nothing about this film I didn't love. It will be on my top 10 list of the year, and it's going to be high up there.
Oh, cool.
It might be even number 2. Don't hold me to that, but it's up there.
Spoiler alert. Jeez. Holy cow.
Well, I can take it back. I can take it. Like anybody's like, what's Paul's top 10 list? Oh my God, we need to know right now. And then I just said that was number 2. If we got an email or a text or a tweet that said, Paul, you ruined your top 10 list, then I would stop making comments like that and be aware of it. Until then, I think we're okay. I have to say, we talked about the Oscar nominations last week, and I have to say this again. I am confused how she got left off the list. She was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, which she has a chance to win, I think. Mm-hmm. Saoirse Ronan, costume design. What else? What am I missing? Florence Pugh, your woman. Yeah, she's nominated for Best Supporting Actress. There's just such a solid thumbprint to this film. And it's not a spoiler, and it's not telling you anything that we're talking about, but let's get that out of the way. If you haven't seen Little Women, go see it. If we talk about spoilers, I don't want to ruin it for anybody.
Spoiler for a 150-year-old book. Go.
Well, you never know. I don't know if you remember the scene where she comes down the stairs and she kind of jumps from one step to the next, and she hits the pole on the stairs, and then she jumps down, and it kind of jumps, the editing jumps down the stairs, and then you realize you're in a flash forward, flashback thing going on. By that point, you're already aware that that's happening.
Yep.
It's so solid. It's such a solid choice, and it adds to the storytelling. You have Greta Gerwig's thumbprint all over this movie. It will be looked upon as the movie that should have garnished her second directing Oscar nomination. It should have.
Yeah.
It didn't, but it should have. So I don't have anything bad to say about this movie. I love everything about it.
I think we should definitely focus on the screenplay and focus on what she did with the source material, with the Louisa May Alcott book, and how she was able to create something unique and prescient and something that is able to look backwards and look forwards and take this character of Jo March and this person who was somewhat out of her own time back then, but is now kind of like, that's a character that Steph has talked to me about multiple times and told me that she looked at that character as someone who was focused on herself and did not allow herself to be defined by the people around her or by what other people thought that she should be doing. And she was able to focus on what she was good at, what she was talented at, and hone it and learn about it and succeed in it. And she had that kind of drive. And And I think that that's something, I mean, it's good for anyone to hear, and women, men, doesn't really matter, but it's a great story for people to hear. And what Greta Gerwig does with this film is she's able to take that character, and instead of, chopping off the legs of the character to fit within the society of the late 1800s, she's able to take that character to its complete end by throwing in a little bit of, this film spends a lot more time focusing on Jo March as an author and how she has to navigate the business side of literature and writing and publishing in the mid to late 1800s. Whereas the book and previous iterations of the movie don't really focus on that too much. It does have a main character who does get a book published in it. All of these iterations of the story do. But in Greta Gerwig's version, it's more nuanced, and it brings more to the story. And I thought that was really awesome. So we should probably get into spoilers, because I do want to talk more about that. So spoilers for this particular movie if you haven't seen it. But I loved the structure of the film, where you see the 7 years later and the 7 years earlier together at the same time, and the intercutting between the two. I think that audiences nowadays are, I don't want to say they're more sophisticated, but they're at least used to bouncing timelines a little bit more than maybe even audiences from 1994. After seeing the film, I mean, did you see Little Women when it came out in 94 or rent it or whatever, or no?
I want to say yes, because I remember Winona Ryder was nominated, so I'm pretty sure I saw it, but I don't. And Christian Bale is Timothy.
He's Laurie.
He's Laurie. Yeah,
so he's
I
the
don't
Timothy
remember
Chalamet character, yeah.
And Susan Sarandon's the mom,
Marmee,
and Kristen Dunst is Beth. Yeah, I don't remember it then. I mean, I don't think
Kirsten
I saw
Dunst is young Amy. Kirsten Dunst is Florence Pugh. It's so weird.
Oh,
and then they
okay.
have Samantha Mathis be Amy later on. It's really weird. I didn't like that part where it's like she's young, now she's old, and nobody else changed. It was very awkward. But Florence Pugh is an actress who you could see young and old. Like you can see quote unquote mature Amy, and then younger Amy too. So I don't know. It was probably something they felt they had to do. And Gabriel Byrne was the German guy, which he's obviously not German. He's Irish, but whatever.
And that's Chris Cooper in this?
No,
version?
That's the Chris Cooper's the grandpa. Yeah, Gabriel Byrne is the guy. Gabriel Byrne is the guy who got with Winona Ryder at the end. Yeah, roll that one around in your brain.
Yeah, I don't know what we're talking about anymore. I don't know if I've seen that movie. I'm going to say I haven't. So I don't understand a young Amy or young Beth. What is that all about?
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's very confusing.
Okay.
So, but ultimately it's a linear telling of the story of the book, and it's a kind of like straight up. And the reason why Steph wouldn't see this new version is that was the gospel truth. But after seeing this movie, I sat right next to her. She cried her eyes out multiple times in this film.
So great.
And so
great.
And afterwards, I just asked her just kind of like a very quick kind of like, so how'd you like it? And she's like, it was good. And so, yeah, it was a little somewhat of vindication for me, where it's like, I feel like I've got a little bit of an idea of what a good movie might be. So I'm glad that she went along for the ride. And so it didn't, she said that it didn't make her like the 1994 version any less, and there are good things about that other version. But when compared side by side to this version, there's a lot more to talk about. And there's a lot more things that I'm interested in as far as the structure of the narrative and the intercutting, and what that intercutting allows you to do, to have that stairway scene twice, right, one after the other. It is so impactful, and there's no way you could have done it better. I think that it seems to me like Greta Gerwig dreamt up those two scenes juxtaposed against each other, and then wrote outwards from that scene.
I pulled out the scene that you're talking about.
That's it.
I presented it right
That's
off.
it.
It was so devastating.
Well, and Steph said like, "Oh man, this movie made me cry, and I hate crying in movies." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I cried a little bit too." And she was like, "What? You cried?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, it happens every once in a while." And it wasn't this movie. It wasn't the story that Louisa May Alcott had said. It wasn't Greta Gerwig. It was Laura Dern. And the scene where she comes down and Beth has passed away and Laura Dern's sitting at the table and she turns around, and when Saoirse Ronan goes to her, when Joe goes to her, Laura Dern does this thing with her hands where like she kind of puts her hands on Joe's stomach, area, midsection area, and she can't process. Like she doesn't know. She's like, she doesn't know if she should hug Joe or Joe should hug her, or it's this weird feeling where I wasn't watching Laura Dern. I was watching a person. Like it was scary. I was watching a person mourning her daughter's death. And then it's like, no, we can't.
Her baby daughter.
Her
baby.
We can't do that. No. I shouldn't see this. No camera should ever look at this. So
dude, you're breaking my heart. Just tell me about it again. You're killing me, man. The thought that a movie made you cry is incredible because you don't normally. Yeah. And it was a
Captain Phillips moment. That's what it was.
It is a beautiful, beautiful. I'll bet you she didn't even realize she did it when she did it. And I'll bet you that Greta didn't say a thing, processed the film, went to dailies, looked at it and said, yeah, that's going in. And I'll bet you that was 1 or 2 takes. I'll bet you that after she did that, because sometimes when you're exploring something, your body does something that you're not even aware of. It just does stuff. And in a way, that's the best stuff. That means you're right there in the moment. And yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh, not again. Like, it's bad enough that this is happening in general. But then you have to do that when you're nominated for an Oscar for another movie. I would almost vote for her in Marriage Story just because of what she did in Little Women and what she's done for us over a career of stunning performances. I was thinking about Laura Dern yesterday and how she's the young blind girl in Mask with Eric Stoltz. And Cher, you ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh my God.
No.
There's such
I don't want
a
to see that
great
movie.
scene.
Ugh, seems like a really sad movie.
There's a scene where she can't see, she's blind, and he tries to describe colors to her by giving her hot stones or hot potatoes, I think. And he's like, that's red. And then he gives her cotton balls and he's like, that's white. And she's like, I think I understand what you're talking about.
Wow.
And she is just great in it. And ever since then, I've known her name. And then she did this weird avant-garde turn where she started being in David Lynch films.
Yep.
And she's fantastic in all of that. She's so great in all those movies. So I'm happy for her, and I'm happy she's going to win an Oscar this year because that's what it looks like is happening. But it's probably that kind of moment that when she starts to fade from this world, I hope that she gets to remember what she did, because to live in that moment is what an actor is for. And it's there. So when you said Laura Dern, Captain Phillips, I was like, yep. And I immediately swiped away from your text because you texted me that, and I immediately swiped because I was in denial. I was like, I'm not thinking about that. I'll think about it when we talk about the podcast, but I'm like, I'm not going there, because it was a joyful experience, but it was also devastating. It was so hard to watch. So I'm kind of happy for you. I'm kind of happy that you had that moment. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm a human. I feel. Good for me.
All evidence to the contrary. I'm a human. I feel. Well, I mean, all I do is feel. So it's nice to see somebody who can maintain.
Yeah.
And you maintain, and I do not. I do not. Yeah. I had to take my glasses off a couple of times because I kept steaming them up because it was so, and it wasn't necessarily a crying situation. It could have, sometimes I get excited and my face goes back and my glasses get really close to my face and they steam up. Plus they're also kind of broken too. But anyway, so.
Well, yeah, there's a couple other things that after seeing both films, the 94 version and this Greta Gerwig version, that I realized that Louisa May Alcott is actually really, really funny too, because there's the scene where Saoirse Ronan's character Jo comes back and she cut her hair to get the money so that so she can donate it essentially, but to the cause. But when Amy says, Jo, your hair, you're one beauty. And I was like, oh man, that's a great line, because it's such a like cynical, cutting line. Like, oh, you're so beautiful, but like that's the only thing that's beautiful about you. And I was like, man, Greta Gerwig is awesome. And then the same exact line is in the 1994 version, which which verifies the fact that that's just something that both screenwriters lifted from the Louisa May Alcott novel. And so, I mean, it's just the fact that you can have that kind of biting humor in something that was written in the 1800s. I don't know. I guess I never think of that type of humor or that kind of backdoor compliment that they would have that in the 1800s. I just feel like we're the coolest, we're awesome, and our comedy is so progressive, but they were doing that stuff back then. So I don't know why I don't, that doesn't just ring true for me. But also there's so many little touches that you see in this that Greta Gerwig peppers in the fact that Jo is ambidextrous just because she has to keep writing. It's like a form follows function type thing. I don't know if that's the right description of that, but she's not ambidextrous because she's naturally ambidextrous. She's ambidextrous because she has forced herself to learn how to write with both hands because she can't stop writing. It's something that the art form is forcing her to physically change herself, and that's really cool. And it's such an understated part of her character, but it's there, and you see it, and you clock it. So I just love that. So what did you think about the other performances other than Saoirse Ronan, who I think was awesome?
Knocks it out. Timothée Chalamet is just a natural. He's a natural, and this is going to lead me to something about Greta Gerwig's thumbprint in the way that she's adapted this and the way that she's written it. It has this very period feel to it, but it also has a very modern sensibility about it. And I don't think that she tried for that. I think that that's just something that happened in her writing. And I think Timothée Chalamet is the prime example of it. And they also use it in the script. It's also in the idea of the movie where he talks about how he doesn't really fit in, but he knows how to fit in, and he knows how to dance, but he doesn't really. They talk about that when they do that great epic dance around that's so beautiful. Loved him. I don't have a problem with Emma Watson at all. Some people were talking about how her dialect went in and out from Massachusetts American back then to British. It didn't bother me, and I like her as an actress. So the thing that I think is, how do you say the Beth's name, the actress? Do you have it pulled up?
Eliza
I believe her
Scanlon?
last name. Is it Eliza? Okay, I wasn't sure. She's fantastic too. She's a standout. She could have very easily just disappeared, and we would not have remembered her. But when she walks in and sees that piano in her house, it's beautiful. And that relationship that she has with Chris Cooper, Chris Cooper comes into movies, has 2 or 3 scenes, says little to nothing, and takes over every amount of your energy while you're watching him, and does this thing that no other supporting actor I've ever seen does. He is a standout in everything he does. And that scene at the end, it's so touching. And the scene, I mean, we've talked about spoilers are coming, so I don't know if people know this, but Beth passes away. And I know it because of the Friends episode. Did you ever see that Friends episode where they switch books? Yeah. And Joey's reading Little Women, and I think Jennifer Aniston is reading Cujo. And whenever I think it's Cujo, whenever he's reading it, he gets scared. He puts it in the freezer because he feels like that's protecting him. And that's where she finds it. And they switch books because he's like, this is the greatest book ever. And she's like, no, this is the greatest book. And then they get mad at each other, and they, he starts to spew things about Cujo, and she's like, don't tell me. He's like, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, Beth dies. And he's like, what? So I don't know if I remember that from the 1994 version, but I knew it was coming. That scene between Chris Cooper and Saoirse Ronan at the end is so masterfully done. He is so on point in that scene. And Laura Dern and then Saoirse and then Florence were all nominated. So, those two were nominated. A lot of times we talk about how I can love something just because of the performances, or a performance can save a movie for me or make me not see everything else that you guys see. They're so in simpatico in this movie. The performances are as stunning as the cinematography. The cinematography is as stunning as the directorial choices that they make. It is old and new all at the same time. And that has a lot to do with the speeches. That has a lot to do with the way that they hold their body. It's interesting to me because if you watch the way Florence Pugh plays the scenes when she's younger, she's kind of a little bit more spastic in her movement. And then when she's in Paris and she's painting, she's very structural. Her corset has taken over. She has become this person. So it's just, there's nothing about anybody in this movie. Who is Emma Watson's? Tracy Letts is in 2 scenes. And you don't forget him. You don't forget him. You know it. Who is the guy who plays Meg's husband? James Norton, is that him? Yeah, James Norton.
Mm-hmm.
He's great too because you understand everything just by a look. You know that he wants more for them, but he can't do it. You're going to be poor. She's like, I'm okay with that. And at one point you're learning she's not okay with that.
Yeah.
But then because Greta does such an incredible job at writing this, you get to see the scene where she decides that it's not a big deal that she's going to be poor after you've seen that scene of her being mad that she's poor. It's masterful because you get to see a character backwards in a way. And I love the scene with Emma Watson and Timothy Chalamet when he's like, I don't like your dress. I was like, what a dick. Like, what is his problem? But he can't not be truthful to this family.
Yeah.
And she gets blindsided by that because she's realizing that she's in a world that she doesn't necessarily belong in, but she's going to try to fit in anyway. And I love the scene where they're going up the stairs and she's like, this is the only dress that I have. And she's being very simple and very honest about it. She's like, this is the dress that I brought to wear. And the other girl's like, oh, I'll get you another dress. And I guess because it's not her and Timothy Chalamet doesn't think it suits her, it becomes a thing. But that scene where she's got her back turned to the party and she's looking out the window and she's kind of turned on the sofa and then he comes up, it's so well done. And she's so good in it. It's amazing. So I have nothing bad to say about the acting.
The men in the film, it's interesting as you're describing it. I'm realizing that the men in the film are there to advocate for the women. And the women are, in some cases, Meg in that scene, she's trying to fit in. She's trying to be the woman who society thinks she should be. And the Timothy Chalamet character, Laurie, is saying, no, that's not who you are. And you shouldn't have to conform to who you are. So he could just as easily push her forward and push her into this societal view of what she should be or what women should be. And in the same way, you've got their father, played by Bob Odenkirk, who, by the way, we don't see until he comes back from war, which is perfect. There's no reason, timeline wise, we should have seen him before we see him, before the reveal of him. But purposefully, Greta Gerwig saves that so that when we see him on screen for the first time and we see their reaction to him, we're having the same reaction to him as they are. They feel like they haven't seen him in years and years and years, and we've never seen him, so we get that same reaction. It's very well done from a filmmaking standpoint, from a writing standpoint. But you've got Father Marsh, I guess is his name, and you've got John Brooke, and you've got Laurie's, I guess, Mr. Lawrence? Yeah, Mr. Lawrence, played by Chris Cooper, and then Laurie. They're all kind of feeding into the fact that these women are individuals. These women shouldn't be limiting themselves in the same way. They should be their own selves. And I'm guessing back then that was probably very rare. And so you get to see a representation of that, which is new and interesting. And you're right. I mean, the performances were amazing, but yeah, and Chris Cooper, like just the scene where he comes down the stairs and sits down, like in the 1994 version of the film, they give they give Beth the piano and all this stuff, and the father does, played by, I think, John Gielgud is who plays the Chris Cooper character. So famous actor, but there's really not that much of an emotional connection between the two characters because we don't see them together at all. But just that one scene of her playing in his house and him listening to her and reacting in that way sets up the scene later on where he gives her the piano in her home. And it's the little things that make a huge difference. And that's why I think that not only the writing, but also the directing should be, talked about more. But at least Greta Gerwig got recognized for her feat that she's done with this, because it can't be it cannot be, it's got to be a daunting task to sit there with a famed piece of literature and say, you know what, Louisa May Alcott, I've got a better idea. I'm going to take all the things that you did and I'm going to move them around to something that I think is interesting. It's a lot of risk to take, but I think she succeeded.
It's not when you're solid in your choices, and she's solid. Here's why I think it's important. I love the fact that you asked me, what did I think of the acting? We have spent 10 minutes talking about the actors, and Meryl Streep is in this movie. The master of masters is in this movie, and we haven't even mentioned her because of all of the impactful performances from everybody else. Yeah. And I don't know if that's Greta Gerwig. I don't know if that's, they say it's a miracle a film ever gets made, that it seems to be impossible. It's literally moving a mountain. And they say
she was pregnant during the shooting too.
Who was?
Greta Gerwig.
Was she really?
Yeah.
Wow. With Noah Baumbach's baby?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good for them. Oh, well, they got their Oscar. They don't need Oscars. They got theirs. They both created two of the best films of the year. And they got actors nominations. They will be talked about for decades, these two films. And I'm not going to spend any time talking about Noah Baumbach and Marriage Story because we're talking about Greta Gerwig. And
exactly.
If I had seen Little Women, I probably would have spent a significant amount of time in Marriage Story talking about her and what a lucky man he is to be around that artist. And she's stunningly beautiful too. So good for them. I'm glad. I'm happy that they have a baby. I'm happy that they're doing great work. I just have to go back to the fact that we spent all this time talking about actors and never mentioned the best American character actress of all time. I mean, it's just, that says something. And she does what she does in this film, and she's good in this film. There's nothing majorly standoutish about it because she's always this great. I love the fact that she takes the greatest American actor of all time, some would consider, and pretty much delegates her to 2 or 3 scenes.
Yeah.
Important scenes, well done scenes. They're extremely well acted, no doubt about it. But she didn't try to make Meryl Streep an epic character because she had Meryl Streep. She utilized Meryl Streep with what she did and for the character, and that's it. And that's a brilliant choice. That's brilliant.
Well, and just the character is just a representation of the status quo. I mean, that's all she's doing is parroting back what society is telling women. That's it at that time. So, but at the same time, Meryl Streep, not the character that Meryl Streep played, but Meryl Streep, the actress and, creative person, from what it sounds like, was the driving force in focusing her energies on Amy's character and why Amy makes the decisions that she makes. So did you hear that story where she kind of really pushed for Amy's character to really annotate why she makes the decisions that she makes? Because in the 1994 film, and I don't know about the book, I didn't read it, but in the 94 film, Amy just seems to kind of like glom on to Laurie when he makes advances at her, and she says like, well, you know what, we'll make this work, and that's fine, and at least I get you. And, Joe's not going to have you. But in this film, it's more of, do you feel like it's more of like a, not necessarily transactional relationship, but it is an inevitability that she is choosing who she chooses, and that you can, and she even has the line in this film, I feel like you can choose who you love. And that's counterintuitive to what Lori feels.
No, it's made very. You're made very aware of the fact that she's in love with Lori early on in the film.
Yes.
When they see each other in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
It's Lori.
Even when she's
she
a
says
kid,
that.
even when she's like a kid and she's, enamored with him.
She's in love with him. He fell in love with her. And I think that's why it's not icky gross, because I'm like, can you not find another guy in that town? I mean, Timothée Chalamet is the bomb, and he is a very attractive young man, but
she is in Paris.
There's nobody else.
Yeah. There's got to be somebody else.
I mean, come on, you're in Paris. I mean, you can look at you, Florence. Go out. Fly, be free. But it's done in such a way in this version, and I am getting ready to read the book. It's not my next book, my book after my next book. And I was going to try to read it before I saw the movie, but I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I think I needed to understand what Greta Gerwig brought to it in order to separate myself once I read the book. I never have a problem with that, though. Book is a book, a movie's a movie, a play's a play. But it's not done in an icky way. I totally believe that Lori falls in love with Amy. I totally believe it. And I totally believe they were meant to be together. It makes sense. She's in love with him and he's in love with Joe. Mm-hmm. And Joe is never going to be in love with Lori the way, and she says it, I'm never going to look at you the way that you look at me. You don't understand. It's wrong for me to even entertain the idea that you're going to be head over heels our whole entire existence, but I'm only doing this because I'm supposed to marry and you're rich and all that other stuff. So the fact that she finds who she finds, which is great. It's so well done. The end of the movie when she gets with the French guy, what's his name?
Louis Garrel or Louis Garrel?
Friedrich. The fact that who is in love with her from the moment he sees her, and she is too. She just doesn't realize it. Her focus is not on about being in love. Her focus is about becoming a writer and becoming published. And the fact that he tells her the truth is really true love. These are not very good.
He's another one of the male characters who's he's helping to keep her focused on what she's about and on what her purpose is and on what she loves. And the only reason she's writing those zombie tales and all that stuff is because that's the only thing she can get published, because that's all that
makes money too.
Yeah. I mean, it makes money. Exactly.
Yeah. And she totally has sour grapes afterwards. And when she's walking up the stairs and she's like, I'm the only one who can provide for my family and I'm going to do it and bug off. She's not mad at him. She's mad at herself because she knows these are crap. And I also think it adds to the scene at the end where she's like, nope, I'll take 10%. And he's like, yeah, not going to happen. And she's like, and I'm going to keep the rights to my book. I'm going to keep the copy. What are those? She says. And then she finds out what those are. And she's like, nope, I'm keeping that too. Without a solid person in your life, male, female, romantic, not romantic person telling you your art is worth more than you think it is or that you can get, she would have never been able to know the difference. She would have never been able to stand her ground. She's a strong-willed person. I'm not saying a man gave her the strength to stand her will.
No.
But the understanding of what her value as an artist is through his eyes gave her the strength to say, nope, I'm keeping the copyright. Done. It's just not debatable. And the way that she negotiates in the beginning and the way that she negotiates at the end, she's grown so much. And but she also knows that he wants this book now. She doesn't know that his daughters come to him and she's like, and they're like, hey, how does this book get finished? What's the ending? And he knows that he has a potential sellable product. She doesn't know that specifically, but she knows when they start negotiating, something's different with this guy and how he's treating me. Before it was transactional, and he tries to keep it. He kind of downplays it. Well, if I sell this book, if I'm able to sell this book, and she's like, no, you will. You'll be able to sell this book. And here's what I want. Without all of the people being honest with her in her life, that would have never happened.
What do you think about the end of the film where it's kind of like cross-cutting between her talking with Tracy Letts and him saying, no, she's got to get married. She's got to go after the boy. You've got to do all this stuff. And then that cross-cutting with her watching her book getting published. So the end of the film is her going after the guy and in the rain and make it's essentially the the airport chase, making sure he doesn't get on the plane. It's the same scene. And that juxtaposed with her watching her book being published. Really, I think that, it is kind of like a weird, like, which one is it for this character in this film? Obviously, in Louisa May Alcott's book, it ends in one way. She ends up with Professor Bear, and he ends up staying with her, and they have a school, and everybody's there, and it's great and awesome. And you could also read that at the end of this film, Jo March is seeing her book being born, essentially. I mean, it's like she's looking at it through a window, much like a woman would look at her child in the nursery after being born. She's looking at her book being born, being created, and that could be the end for Greta Gerwig's Jo March, and ending up with the professor or not ending up with the professor is inconsequential. But I don't know. It's a kind of a cool thought experiment to say, like, there's a telling of this story where she doesn't end up with the guy. She doesn't run after him, but she still gets her book published. It's not because of him that she gets her book published. Or in the 1994 version of the film, it's because of him that she gets published. She sends her manuscript to him. He gives it to a buddy. His buddy gives it to people, and they get it published. And in this telling, he has nothing to do with her book getting published. So, I don't know. It's interesting.
I have absolutely no problem with her running through the rain to the train station.
It's a great scene.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. If she hadn't already published her book, then I would have been like, oh no, she's not being saved by her art. She's being saved by a guy. Come on, we've seen it a million times. That's not the point of this. The point is that she became who she was by producing a book.
But she negotiated the end of that book.
Right.
Yeah, it had to end in the way that we see those scenes end. But that doesn't mean that's how the Jo March character's life ended.
I don't know. When I read the book, I'll let you know how the book ends, because it will be interesting to see how much this was altered to fit the idea of what Greta Gerwig was doing.
Well, from what I've heard, Louisa May Alcott had to make concessions to get her book published.
Well, I want to make a point about that too. He says, if she's not married, then she's got to die. Well, both happen. Both of those things happened in her life. Her baby sister dies, and her elder sister gets married. So there is a wedding and there is a death.
Sure.
And it's happening for two different reasons. It's not happening because your protagonist needs to be married or to die at the end of it, because nobody can handle a woman just surviving and being published author and being successful. No one's going to buy into that. So if it didn't already happen to the storyline, I would have been like, oh, that's so, it's just so not modern to think that a woman would have to end her story that way, but it happens in the story. So I was okay with that. I was like, that's kind of brilliant, because when he says that, you're like, oh, that's already happened. And because of the way that Greta Gerwig has structured this movie, you've already seen it. But even if it had happened after he had said that somehow, some way, it still would have been poignant, because all of that stuff that was a requirement to her being a writer and being published had already happened. I don't know how much she modernized it, because I haven't read the book. Like I said, I'll let you know. But to me, it makes sense both ways, in my opinion. I don't remember the 1994 version if I saw it, so I don't remember him taking the book, Professor Bear. I don't remember any of that. So, but that would make sense, because it probably would have taken somebody to be the catalyst to jump into that world, especially if you were a woman. That's just the way it was. And, it says a lot about Florence Pugh's character when she says, I'll probably marry that guy, because that's what my responsibility for my family is. If I want my family to survive, I need to marry somebody well off. But deep down inside, she wants to marry somebody that she loves, even though she's going to put on a pretty face, and she likes that guy and he's totally cool and he's done nothing wrong. And then that beautiful scene in the garden with that archway and that wide shot that she has. Is
such a wide shot. Yeah.
So beautiful. I saw it on the biggest screen in Norfolk. It was just It was
It does.
beautiful.
It looks like a painting.
It sure does. And then when Joe and Lori are walking the field, when they have that big "I'm not in love with you" conversation, that's all beautifully shot too.
And the other scene I'll bring up if we're talking about, beautiful scenes is when Joe and Beth are on the beach and Joe's leaning against Beth. They're sitting on a blanket on the beach, and you see the wind blowing the sand like over them, like towards the water. It's absolutely beautiful. I think, I don't know how they set that up or if they noticed that, but it's some sort of like, it can mean so many different things. It's like they're kind of in the middle of this chaos and they're just trying to live in the middle of this chaos. There's also all these things going on around them, and they're still, and their stillness, them being together is like a comfort to each other. And even though there's all kinds of craziness going on around them, I mean, it's such a well composed shot, and it means a lot. Not only is it beautiful, but it also means a lot for each of the characters. So I thought that was just awesome. Man, she should have gotten a nomination. Okay.
I'm thinking that too, dude. I'm thinking that this is going to be the film that everybody gives as an example of why and what was out there. I'm not going to go into that again. But my point to what Amy does later on in the film, it's a very modern thing that she does. She turns down stability for love. And I don't know if that's in the novel. I don't know if that's in the 1994 version, but it mirrors everything that Joe is doing. So whether or not a man takes her manuscript and gives it to other people, it doesn't matter. She wrote that. It's her book. It's going to be her way when they edit it and when they put it out and they publish it. And what Amy does is a representation of what one of the only choices that a woman has. She could have chosen complete financial stability and sacrificed other stuff, but something inside her said, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's a very unlike that time thing to do. It just didn't happen. So I think that Greta Gerwig's interpretation of the original novel, her take on it, I think it's all there in the original novel. Like I said, once I read it, I'll let you know, but I'm pretty sure this book has not lasted the test of time because it's about women doing what society told them to do. Yeah. It's about their ways around that type of thing. It's a very modern idea, but yet women had to have had those thoughts. They knew that they knew that this wasn't the way that it should be. And, we're still in 2020. We're just coming into 2020 and we're still in that mindset somewhat. We're talking about a woman who wasn't nominated for an Oscar when only so many handfuls of women have been nominated and only one woman has won. Yeah. So I think that's why this novel has been embedded in our psyche and has been around for as long as it has. Here's what I loved about, we were talking about the acting. Here's what was more important to me. Each character had their moment. The three sisters were not just supporting actors or supporting characters to Joe's story. All four of them, including the mother, including the Chris Cooper character, they all had moments where it was just about them. The movie was just about them. The story could have been just about how Beth got that piano and how it could have been about her. The whole story could have been about her. It didn't necessarily need to be about Joe. And I think it was great that Greta Gerwig took a moment for each character throughout the process of the movie where they were as important as the lead or as important as the main character, if there was one. They're all very important, all the way to Professor Bear, where he's only in 2 or 3 scenes. And that dinner scene at the end, though, oh my God, he's spectacular in that, how he's just listening to her like she's the smartest person in the room and he knows it. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I thought this was great, how when you go see a movie, a period piece, and they have springtime and it's so beautiful and the flowers and the wedding where they took the flowers and put it in their hair and then they put them on the post outside and on the doorway, and then you have Christmas time, and then you have winter, and then you have feeding starving people. Not to downplay any of that. That's all well done in this movie. What happens is it's perpetually Christmas in this movie. It's never not Christmas. You don't have just Christmas for 20 minutes of this film and then it's done. And then you go into the next season. It's Christmas in the beginning. It's Christmas in the middle. It's Christmas at the end. It's perpetually springtime. there is always something going on where you're reminded that this is the season, and it's never just about that season for that 20 minutes of the film. It's always springtime. It's always fall. It's always winter. It's brilliant how once you come out, because normally you just go through the seasons in a movie, and you go through Silver Linings Playbook, yet again, another reference. Yeah, you go through Halloween, then you go through Thanksgiving, then you go through Christmas, and the movie ends after Christmas time. And it's brilliantly done. This is, it's such a beautiful thing at Christmas time with the lemons and the oranges and the wreaths. I don't know if you noticed that, the dried fruit in the wreaths.
Yeah, they're putting those like, whatever that is, the little like black things. I don't know what those are, the little pokey black things. I don't know what they
cloves.
do. Cloves, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. And then you see another Christmas time that's later on in the film's chronological order, and there's candles on the Christmas tree and they're lit. And so,
and they had popcorn, and then when the dad comes, like Amy spills the popcorn all over the place.
Well, what's funny about that is she's saying something, she's lecturing, I don't know who, about wasting decorations. Well, that's a waste of a decoration is what she says to her. You're not going to want to do that. That's a waste of a decoration. And then she sees her dad and the popcorn goes flying. And that's primarily the decoration for the tree.
Yeah.
It's popcorn and some ribbons. That's it. Mm-hmm. So it might be because I love the holidays, but I've never seen that in a movie where you get to flash forward to a holiday and then flash back to a holiday and then flash forward to springtime and then flash back to, I just thought it was really well done. And the production design is gorgeous. France looks beautiful. The building that they're standing in front of, whatever that epic lawn and that huge building that they're standing in front of, is just beautiful. And a lot of times there are films out there where if it's supposed to be a seedy, dark, ugly city, it just looks like they purposely made a pretty okay city look dark and seedy by adding trash cans and filth and prostitutes and all this other stuff. And you're like, that's decked out to look like a dirty city. There is something so real and so vibrant where the publishing company is, where Tracy Letts, his business is. It's so real and so vibrant, but it doesn't look like a set. It looks like a real, it's real. It's 100% real looking. And that's hard to do because it is a set. Those horse and buggies are no longer used. So it's not like we really 100% have an idea of what they look like. We do because of pictures and stuff, but not really. So that's really hard to do. And it comes down to Greta Gerwig going, yes, no, yes, 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 no, yes, 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 no. And that's what she did. And that's the choices that she made. And it's just a more incredible experience because of it. It's just stunning.
Okay. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. And you go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. And you can tweet us at actorengineer. We'll see you next time.